Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you today?
Very good, very good.
It's been a
Okay.
great summer for us so far, so enjoying some good weather these days.
Yeah, well, we're not that lucky yet. Things have started to improve a little bit this week,
Hmm.
but still, it's not the peak of the season yet. We are looking forward to the peak, hopefully in a few days to come.
Yeah, great. Good.
So how is everything else? Given the situation we are in, how is the business doing and so forth?
You know, it's interesting. I feel like I remember the day when we all, were in the office last, and then it was okay, we're gonna bring, our laptops and everything kind of home, and then we just never went back. But instantly we just shifted to working remotely. I think customer wise, everyone kind of had to figure out what was the new, the impact on their business and how they were going to continue operating. And then from a security standpoint, because that's what we do, we really didn't see I mean, it depends on the industry, but we definitely saw some some acceleration of projects that we already had in the works because you have a huge workforce of people that needs to have secure VPN connections, and they need to access their databases, and they need to do remote development and remote working. So when it comes to how secure are all your connections, and how do you keep your business running, it's we definitely saw, like, one example was with a company that did fitness, home fitness videos and things like that. And they instantly saw an uptick in people who wanted to continue to stay fit but couldn't go to their gyms. And so these guys were becoming overloaded on and needed some help with being able to manage all these new connections and users that they had. So anyway, I'd say, yeah, it depends, but definitely been we definitely been busy and having lots of good conversations, which is great to see and great to hear.
And how do you see within the context of working remote, how do you see the productivity, has that dropped or even, have been better now?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. So we've actually shifted a lot of our messaging and marketing towards virtual, as has everybody. And I think there's certain webinars and content that we deliver where we're teaching and we're engaging and educating, and people now have more time to do that because they're less, driving to an office, they're not on an airplane, they are thinking more about the future maybe. And I this is a pause to say, what's our strategic initiative around security and IoT, and how do I kind of take a step back and rather rushing from the day to day, let's figure out what's most important. So I feel like I've seen people kind of take a step back and do that. And I feel like, people have also adjusted because it seems like it was a good distraction too, to be able to work and not kind of think about some of the uncertainties and other things happening in the world. But it was one thing that a lot of people could control, and feel lucky to be having good work to do and things like that. So that's kind of our experience so far.
Mhm. A lot of Zoom meetings at this end as well. We're meeting a lot of team members remotely, and which otherwise used to be a coffee conversation. We have to now sort of, find a time to talk to some of our colleagues. I don't know the feeling out there.
Yeah, that would be the one thing I would say. You know how you would be either going into a meeting or coming out of a meeting, and you'd have those little hallway conversations.
Yeah.
That's totally gone. So, but at Key Factor, we've done a lot of cultural things. We have weekly, kind of happy hour cultural things where we play different games, and it kind of keeps that culture going on. We have a Monday morning coffee meeting where people join and talk about their weekends, and it definitely takes more extra effort. And we try to do video at the start of meetings when we can to keep that personal connection, and then we go off video and just kind of get right into the meeting. So that is the one thing that I totally agree with you. Those little one-to-ones are hard, but you have to make a little bit extra effort to not just go right into business from the
Yeah,
beginning.
especially in this particular time when everything is so challenging, to get things done. I guess it's important to have those smaller sessions. Now, you mentioned the security, one of those aspects of IoT devices connected to the internet. How do you see this challenge overall?
Yes, this is a big topic.
Yeah,
So,
I have time.
great. Yeah, so I've been in IoT for a while, and I kind of one of the first projects I was working on was smart connected lighting, where we were adding radios and creating a mesh network of these devices that would detect, the light level and the energy used on these light poles. And I remember going through this project launch and thinking, how are we going to make sure that these devices that we would place inside a city, are controlled only by a gateway and then a server that is allowed to talk to these devices. And this was maybe 10 years ago now, and so we knew a little bit about using keys and using unique keys, and that was kind of my start into IoT security and how to uniquely identify devices so that you couldn't have a neighboring city be able to control the lights and turn them on and off, right? So things have really exploded and accelerated since then, and we hear numbers from Gartner talking about 25 billion devices in next year that are going to be connected, and that rate has been going up and up. So when I hear numbers like that, I instantly think, okay, each one of those devices which has a network stack on it and has connectivity is an entry point into somebody's network, right? Some customer network or a energy grid, or you name it, some piece of critical infrastructure, perhaps transportation. So how do we make sure that each of those little connections are secure and only can be accessed by authenticated users? So what we like to talk about and understand is when you're designing an IoT project and you have to think about everything from your actual end device that is functioning and collecting data and turning things on and off, to then what other application that IoT device is talking to, and what other data it might be aggregating, and then the connection to the back-end server or central management system. And how do you make sure that data that travels from the endpoint all the way up to the cloud is secure across all those potentially insecure communication channels, whether it's some sort of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular connection? How do you ensure that everything within the system secures the data where it needs to? And those are the kind of things that we start to think about how to design security into the whole IoT system from the beginning.
And you mentioned about user authentication and also data moving to the cloud. What kind of encryption are you using to ensure that the data is intact and it's not going to be tampered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a couple ways to think about that, and typically what we are discussing is how to use client certificates to be able to do authentication back to a server. And when it comes to IoT devices, what we do is we would embed a unique digital identity, which is essentially a certificate, into a device, and we create that when the device is produced. And so part of what creates that that certificate is that there's a private key that is generated and a crypto library, which there's different algorithms that you can use that are available today, but be able to select a crypto algorithm that can create a very random, hard to crack key, and then from that key to be able to create a certificate that is then tagged to that end IoT device. And by doing that, you have a unique identity that again has been created for that device. That private key never leaves that device. And what you do is then you generate a corresponding public key, which is mathematically related, and that is then what is used for exchange with other devices, to servers, things like that. And we go through this process of what we call mutual authentication to make sure that you only communicate with devices that you are allowed to communicate with and exchange data with, so that connection that you create between the two is a TLS connection. So then you can send data across. So it's something that we've done in the web, right? And we've done for online banking and marketplaces and things like that, very well established. We're starting to see that trend moving towards IoT devices and being adopted there, because it's very robust, it's very scalable. So when we talk about these 20 billion devices, it's something that we can handle that volume when it comes to creating unique things that identify each of your end devices.
Which particular sector do you think is benefiting more versus the other?
From IoT?
Yeah, from IoT, just to give you an example, maybe transportations or maybe healthcare, or if you think about all those different sectors.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk about two things. So first industry that I see benefiting from connectivity is in the medical space. And if you think about there's lots of studies that show about how diabetes is on the rise, and so we have more patients that are in need of detection of glucose levels, and then correspondingly being able to administer insulin in a system that is connected to patient constantly, right? So that is something that we're trying to improve the quality of life and achieve this idea of an artificial pancreas, right? So someone can have a constant monitoring of what is in their body and what they need to stay balanced. And so that is a case where we need to make sure that the levels that are measured and then are interpreted and then are maybe sent via the cloud or via a mobile app to a cloud to the clinician and the doctor is trusted and is not tampered with, so that any adjustment that the doctor would want to make to that medication is not going to harm the patient. So that's a use case that is, I think, it's really helping people and improving their quality of life and their quality of service when it comes to how their well-being is. So that's where IoT and connected information is really helping out. So again, but tying it to security, making sure that that is not being intercepted. Another one on healthcare is the pacemakers. Same thing. If you have a connection to a person to understand how their pacemaker is operating, you don't want that at all to be modified, because that could have some pretty drastic effects. So those type of things I think are benefiting, and we have to take them with special care. The other industry I'd say that we've really seen a ramp up in terms of IoT usage is in this utility energy and smart grid type of space where you have asset monitoring devices that are detecting how large machinery, turbines, equipment is running. And that can tell you when you might have a potential issue with one of these pieces of equipment starting to malfunction, whether that's by detecting a certain type of vibration or sensing a level of current or some other alarm that's telling you that something is off. So those types of pieces of equipment that can be added onto the front end of an overall system gives visibility, remote visibility into what could happen with that piece of equipment, which then could cause an outage, again, in our infrastructure, which would impact a lot of people, whether it's loss of power, loss of water, those types of things. So I think that is another example of how pulling data from these big assets that help kind of keep us all moving, keep our economy moving, is important to understand and secure those connections as well.
As we are connecting a lot of devices or even things, any things that we're connecting to the internet, you also mentioned about the information from earlier, like 50 billion devices would be connected. How do you see the impact of that in the energy sector, as far as the consumption of energy?
Yes. So thoughts on that would be, I think the more data you collect, the more models we can build to determine how much of a resource we're using, whether that be electricity, whether that be water, whether that be a meter that's connected to your house. And I think being able to collect that kind of information and optimize when that energy is used or how that resource is accessed can help when it comes to using it at the right time. So for example, I mentioned the street lighting. Mm-hmm. The system we were working on had sensors to detect occupancy of vehicles moving around a certain part of the city, as well as people. So for example, it's nighttime, you want to have the lights on, but do you need to have the lights on at 100% of the light level, or can you adjust it at certain times? Can you adjust it as the sun is coming up? If you detect the light level, then you can keep a constant light level, but you're reducing the energy that's being used on your light poles. So those types of things, I think, are helping cities, are helping communities to be able to optimize their resources. And you can kind of see parallels to that also when it comes to the home and consumers, in terms of also being able to use their energy when it's not peak hours. So maybe running the dishwasher or the laundry machine and things like that. If they have visibility into how their energy is being used and can make their smart devices run at different times, then overall they're kind of conserving and saving. So I think there's a lot of potential to kind of think about those use cases, possibilities.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, Luna, as we are connecting pretty much everything, even my water bottle. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking there must be a tremendous amount of stress in our energy grid, right? So that's where the question is coming from. I was just thinking it would be too much of energy users, right?
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. The connected, everything is becoming connected. I remember last year I was in a hotel. I haven't traveled in a long time. Obviously, many of us haven't, but I was in a hotel and I was getting ready to go to an event to speak, and I was kind of wondering what the weather was. And in my home, I have Alexa, the speakers, virtual assistants, kind of in the house, in different places, in my office, in the kitchen, and I, if I'm kind of getting ready to leave, I would say, hey, what's the weather today? And I in this hotel room, I just said it out loud, Alexa, what's the weather? And then and for a second, I'm like, wait, I'm not at home. I'm in a hotel. And then it answered, because whatever hotel I was in, I forget which, one of the normal chains, had an Alexa in the room. And it actually did say, yes, it's going to be 72 degrees today or whatever it was. And it was just, it had become so ingrained in my behavior that I just kind of thought that way. So things like that also too make me think that as those types of technologies become more ubiquitous, then I think people behavior will change as well. And that's, there's certain things that sometimes it does feel a little bit scary. We are kind of being tracked, but it's also, I mean, I think there's advantages that come from analyzing behavior and making things easier for people. So it's definitely interesting.
Interesting thing that you just shared, because I was thinking along the same line, but a little bit more extreme, I would say. I was thinking, okay, we've connected pretty much everything to the internet now, and my ability to think is used less and less now. I'm not thinking much because I'm only asking questions, and maybe it has some kind of effect to my emotional intelligence and so forth, because we are pretty much connecting everything to the internet and robots and everything. So when do I actually think? So that's my little bit of worry. What do you think about those things? When you are exposed to those kind of environment every single day, do you think those things will disappear?
That is a great question.
Curiosity.
It's interesting because I have children. They're in elementary school, and they're kind of growing up in this world of, they had to do online learning, and we were just kind of thrown into this where everything's on Zoom, and that's just the way that the world worked. Although they had been in a face-to-face learning environment, and I think there's a certain balance of, you need to still have that personal connection and creativity and thinking and learning, but then also we do have to learn how to interact with these tools because they're not going away. And it's kind of like when the washing machine was invented and people were going away from those washboards that you kind of wring your clothes and scrub, there was probably some sort of, well, okay, is this going to spin too fast and explode, or how much water am I using and how much energy am I using? And but it's this shift that had to happen. And think about all the improvements that we have now that maybe at that time when that was happening we didn't think about. So that's kind of how I think about it as I'm going through. And again, my children are growing up. It's learning and seeing how they use some of these tools and these advancements in technology that we have maybe are a little bit hesitant to completely adopt, but I think in the future we will look back and say, how do we live without that before? Because it has made things so much easier. So I think it's kind of it will be a slow evolution, but just thinking about how we then use these new technology tools to make us be able to spend our precious time, free time, on the things that we want to be doing and that really create joy in life and help improve the state of things. And so just kind of being able to embrace that these improvements are trying to help to continue on that path of technological evolution, and not be too big brotherish, but just enough to make us feel like it's really that it's going to be good in the end. That's kind of my just candid thoughts on that one.
No, it's something I happen to ask to all the leaders. Some stupid question that comes to my mind, and I just throw in, and I do that very often. And then even I know that it's a difficult thing to actually predict now moving forward, like how it looked like. But having said that, how do you see the future, using IoT devices, as we are continuing to use it? And how do you see the evolution even further now, let's say beyond 5 years?
Again, beyond 5 years, I definitely see more of this sensor-enabled technology being used especially in factories, and environments where having a human involved could have mistakes, being able to use a piece of equipment to measure and monitor, and then have a way to track that data, and then tell a maintenance person to then go and take action on that. I think we're going to see that be, more and more readily adopted, because there's business benefits around, optimizing your factory operations and keeping costs down, keeping mistakes down, and also keeping down warranty issues. So I think when you have something that's kind of driving the bottom line of how you run your business, thinking about how you can use these latest asset monitoring technologies, or IOT, sensors, to be able to give you those insights. We've been talking about this, in the industrial Internet of Things, and that kind of more and more people are actually implementing technologies to do this. So that's kind of where I see a lot of changes occurring past 5 years, is more factories adopting that. The other thing that I think we're going to see is maybe a bit more approach towards some standardizations. I think that IoT still really is a Wild West in terms of, protocols and platforms, and I think we're going to start to see more alignment between players to help guide. It's really just to give us some guidance about how to design and develop and maintain these things. So I think that's probably something we're going to see more emerging. It's likely going to be industry by industry, right? So I think we have, the kind of industrial space, and we have the medical healthcare space, like we talked about. So standards bodies are helping to drive those. And so that's kind of where I see things just continuing to evolve, but also help to give some more guidance around how to do this.
We spoke about a few different things as far as the evolution, and also we spoke about overall the uses of IoT and so forth. What I'm curious about now is, like, due to this pandemic, a lot of people have lost jobs, right? And for businesses, perhaps adding some of these devices to their arsenal means that they are adding efficiency, and perhaps it also means that a lot of people that are out of the job will remain out of the job, right? And how do you see the impact of IoT, being implemented in the industrial space as far as the job is concerned?
Yeah. So what my opinion on this is that if we're automating tasks and capabilities that can be done by a machine, then what we're doing is we're freeing up our intelligent brains and our talent and our employees that we've invested in to be able to work on that next level of thing. And so it's overall taking those tasks that, you're probably not adding a ton of extra value in, and taking your people and being able to have them develop the next generation product, or do more of an overall system analytic and a dashboard to kind of understand the overall project. And it's continuing to take those things and then move up the ladder and make your overall organization more efficient. And that's kind of how I see that one. So I agree that certain jobs will go away because they're being automated, but it's then shifting your people to be something that to work on something that is much more impactful for your organization. It takes that level of strategic thinking that we don't right now get from a computer just crunching numbers. And that's I think where and how we're going to shift our organizations in the future.
This is something that I saw over the television this morning while watching the news, that a lot of companies are letting their employees go, and then it was a subject of airlines, letting a huge chunk of people, let go from their companies, and it's kind of a difficult time, and also it's similar in the hotel industry, right? You mentioned about one of the hotel industry
Yes.
case, and And I'm sure those companies can benefit, largely using some of these devices connected to the internet, right? So it's sad. At the same time, it's interesting for investors, for people who are running the business, right? And I'm just curious, like what would really happen to those people, like who used to be happy doing the manual work, So yeah.
Yeah, it- I know. I think this is a definitely kind of an unprecedented time when it comes to the overall economy and how jobs are shifting and everything going remote for certain businesses, right? And other industries being impacted, thinking even concerts or other musical events where people are close together. There's, I think, industries that are going to come out of this that are going to change, that are going to decline, but other things will take their place because people will still want to be entertained or people will still want to travel places. It's just going to look different. And it's again, so I think, investor-wise, we've learned a lot from this whole thing again, and this is my little perspective of how this went down for me and my company, but instantly working remotely, having to do whiteboarding and customer meetings and discussions online, keep that personal connection. Like, so those types of industries, I think that'll help businesses continue to operate when something like this happens again, in terms of kind of pandemic planning and preparing for the future. That's something interesting to kind of think about and ponder on, because again, I think not everything is going to survive, but new things are going to emerge, and so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah. And Alan, what kind of role that you play in Keyfactor? What do you do there?
Yeah, sure. And sorry, we just kind of jumped right into
Finally.
it. I'm a. It was, well, you had such great questions. We just went right in. So yes, I'm a senior director of product management, focused specifically on IoT, and so I'm responsible for product roadmap and strategy and alignment of our solution and the value prop that we deliver to the end customers. And so have a lot of conversations about what's the ideal security architecture state of your business and how you want your IoTs to devices to connect, but then how to secure those connections and how to have the right cryptography at the right place and encrypt your data in the right way. So that's kind of what I do, and I really appreciate the time talking with you today.
Thank you for your time as well. It was definitely an interesting conversation. In fact, I was looking to talk to you for a long time, but that's all right. You have your time. Thank you for this time.
It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.